Well, let's get started, and I think the first thing to do, just to get it on camera once and for all, is who you are and what college you came from, and a little bit about your current job and what you do now. So, Peter, you want to start?
Yeah, I'm Peter SCHELLHORN. Came from Georgia Tech. What else was I supposed to do? Oh, what I do now.
Sure.
I have I own a little business. We make fabric awnings in Atlanta.
Okay. All right.
I'm Bob Von Itter. I went to Georgia Tech, majored in architecture, became a land surveyor, had a surveying business for years, and now I'm retired.
How about that? Okay.
I'm Mattie Decker, also Martha Miller. I was at Georgia State University, and I am currently, I taught as a special educator for many years, and went back to graduate school to Northeastern University in Boston, have my master's in writing, and I consider myself a poet, and I'm now a professor at Morehead State University in Kentucky.
I'm Libby Woodruff. I went to the University of Georgia, fiber arts major, and after leaving after being here on Ossabaw, I moved to Western North Carolina, where I am now. I still do fiber arts.
Okay.
Rob Rivers, Georgia Tech architecture and environmental public policy degrees, and I work for a large planning environmental engineering company, URS.
I'm Tom Thomas, Georgia Tech civil engineering. Presently, I have a plumbing business. I'm a licensed plumbing contractor. I do plumbing remodeling work in the metropolitan Atlanta area.
Okay.
I'm Larry Earl. I was at Georgia State and worked with the City of Atlanta Department of Water. Recently retired from there.
I'm Harriet Bass, Clark University, nowhere near Georgia. And I'm a casting director in New York City.
Wow. Okay. All right. Well, I passed out a sheet of paper that was promoting the Genesis project, and I think it was unanimous. None of you had seen it.
Well, yeah.
Okay, you had seen it. So, how did you become interested, and what enticed you to come, and how did you learn about it if you didn't learn from the promotional literature?
Well, I learned about it through Rob Rivers, who, because I know it was a Georgia Tech sort of started project. So Rob Rivers was my introduction to it, and it was just word of mouth.
Okay.
And actually was fairly. Some people think it was easy to get on the project, but actually was hard because we got a stipend for coming down here. It was something that we had to do as a part of, for most of us, a part of college. I get college credit for a course coming down here, but it was very much driven about the ecological movement and we didn't know the word sustainability then, but it was ecology and as we've talked amongst ourselves, but it was 1970, which as we remember, was the first year of Earth Day, and it was very much as a consciousness of everybody about the importance of the environment, particularly, this you know, this 60s crowd, although it was 1970, but it was still the 60s, you know, in Atlanta, Georgia.
We thought we were going to save the world.
Yeah.
Okay. Now
No, I've got a different angle on that. I was just hanging around the Georgia Tech campus, and I saw a group of people sitting around in a circle, and I said, "Hey, what are you guys up to?" And they said, "Well, in a couple of days we're leaving on this project." And I said, "Can I come?"
So it wasn't as hard to get into as you have today.
Well, but he
you
was a
didn't get-
physics he was a physics major, so we thought we might need his help.
Although I had a similar experience, and I was, I think, the only University of Georgia student who came, and I was a friend of Alir Brisbane, Dr. Brisbane, and through Circle of Friends, and he told me about it, and 3 days later I was here.
Oh.
And
Now you
I
met.
was an art student, so they didn't need me. But
Oh, yeah, we did.
Yeah, we did.
So was there really a selection process? Was there someone reading your application?
I didn't get credit for
Okay.
anything.
Yeah, nor did
You
I.
did.
But
Well,
it- I have a document that is the criteria for evaluation of applicants.
well, no, but that,
love to see that.
that a number of us came down a couple weekends
Yes.
beforehand and
Yes.
helped start up the garden. And,
That's right.
And there was a little bit of evaluation process. And some people came down for the weekends, said, "No way, I'm not. There's bugs down there." You know, there are people that came down to see it, and we talked about there were people that came down as a part of the permanent thing that after they were here for a few days, and we don't remember the names, but they said, "This is adios," because it was
It was ugly.
it was rural.
Rural, yeah.
I learned about the project through Bob Haney, who was a close friend of my family, and an artist who was professor at Georgia Tech, John Hardy,
John Hardy.
told me about it. He knew I was from Savannah, and I just immediately knew I wanted to come.
You know, Jim, I guess it's already in the Ossabaw history book. Jim Brown was the original director. He was a classmate of mine at Georgia Tech in architecture, and to get your degree you had to do a thesis, and Jim, I don't remember exactly what his thesis was going to be, but it had something to do with basically an ecology research center, and somehow I got to know about Ossabaw and Mrs. West, and came down here and thought that this was a perfect hypothetical site for his thesis, and then in talking to Mrs. West, who had already been trying to get more college students involved with the island and so forth, that's how it got started, and that's how I got involved, and you know, Jim knew I was kind of a handy person, I guess. You know, my basic purpose for being here was to help with the building. You know, we knew we were going to be building some new buildings.
Yeah, that was the architecture side of why there's so many architects that came down, is because at least we
Exactly. It
could
was
we
a
could
big
build
part
something
of what we were doing.
because we
That's right.
we had no place to live to speak of. But you bring up Dr. Greer, which is very important because Dr. Greer had introduced college students to this environment, and so I think that link between Dr. Greer and the program he'd already established with the island about college students, this is just a way to get more college students involved. But Dr. Greer played a crucial role in the beginning of the
Philip Greer.
Dr. Philip Greer.
Right.
And there were
shorter college kids.
six
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
shorter
there-
In
college
fact, I think
students.
the largest contingent was
Right.
from shorter
Well,
college.
I
Or
don't
was it from
think,
Tech?
although we had a large Georgia Tech contingency, I'm not even sure we all knew that we went to Georgia Tech.
Uh-huh.
You didn't know each
We didn't know each other because we were in class. We were very striated,
Right.
and you didn't know. You
That's
know.
right. I don't think. Yeah, I didn't know any of you.
Yeah, you know, I don't think I even knew you went to Georgia Tech till we came down now.
So another one of the promotional efforts was this seminar they held on April Fool's Day in 1970, and Brisbane was there, and Greer and Jim Brown, and I wonder if any of you attended this thing.
That was in Atlanta.
Well, it says it's at the Little House.
Well, now,
Oh, that was one of our weekends.
That was one of our work
Work
weekends. Yeah,
weekends,
yeah.
yes.
I
So,
was there.
so you came down here
Yeah.
and got prepped for the
Well, we get to
summer.
see whether we could deal with the environment.
There
Yeah.
was a meeting before that, though, with Sandy and Jim in Atlanta.
In Atlanta, there was a
Well,
meeting
that was
before
that was right before, just telling us all about the island,
Yeah,
right?
right,
And
that's
all the
right.
precautions and the dangers and
No, but this
That was in May.
But we came down and I believe this was we worked on the garden and stuff you know,
In
and
April,
and help plant stuff and,
Definitely.
Cleared
gardens.
It
Yeah,
was.
yeah.
It was a
I mean,
big work
it was a work
weekend.
weekend.
Yes,
Yeah.
it was.
But and they made and. One night we stayed, I remember this because of the sand fleas. One night we stayed in the house down there. The second night we camped out on the beach.
This on a work weekend?
On a work weekend. The second night we camped out on the beach and it was sand fleas everywhere. It taught us to never sleep on the beach again.
Unless you're in the waves.
Yeah, you're
Some of
underwater.
us stayed on the north end of the island in the house. Slept inside.
Now, turning back to that promotional piece that I passed around a bit ago, let's look at the third paragraph.
I'll read for you. 1, 2. Participants will.
The ultimate purpose. Okay.
Second paragraph.
The original version of that document says something completely different. And I found in the archives the original, and they cut and pasted that third paragraph on top
So let's
Yeah, I've
hear
got
of the
that.
original.
I've got that piece of
first.
paper.
Can we hear
You
the
mean of the
first?
two parts?
Yeah,
With the
read.
pasted in part?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, the original said, the ultimate purpose is to influence, through the success of Genesis, the creation of a permanent center for studies in human ecology as part of the educational system of Georgia on Ossabaw Island, and further to influence by later divergence of the participants the establishment of other efforts in environmental quality and human ecology in other areas. So that was the original idea, and somewhere along the way they scrapped it and put in
The
this.
spirit of that.
What?
The spirit of that was.
But this makes
But
makes
this
no
paragraph
sense.
is different.
No, but this paragraph makes no sense because it talks about periodic groups of individuals similar in nature to the original Genesis group, which
We were.
we were the original Genesis group.
Oh, so you're saying this is another year?
This is
has
another,
to
even though it says summer
It says summer,
1970,
yeah, it says that.
but it's got to be another year because we were the original Genesis group. There is no other original Genesis group unless.
This was a post-mortem, obviously.
Yeah,
Okay.
this is a rewrite.
Right, right, this is right.
Yeah, but that
That
clearly.
says, unless the Genesis group they're referring to is the one way back.
The first Genesis group.
So would you like for us to speak to the human ecology process, or?
Yes, and I know that this idea of a university system school of human ecology was something Bob Haney cared a lot about. And so I want to talk about Haney, and I talk about this human ecology as a discipline, and what those goals might have been.
I'm not going to talk a lot. You have to separate the difference between what somebody did when they came down on Saturday and gave us a lecture, okay, like a Bob Haney, and then what he did when he came back at midnight to take you on a Jeep ride across the marshes, okay? Those are two different experiences, okay? I mean, and it was, I mean, that he'd come down and when he visited, crazy guy, okay? I mean, but cared about the environment like you couldn't imagine. But it was hard to imagine. He was a zealot before zealots were invented.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, he cared so much about the environment in this place. And that was a formal lecture. But then when he come down at midnight with a Jeep and see who wants to go for a stargazing trip, and and half a dozen of us would jump in the back of the Jeep and spend 2 hours going down the causeway and looking at the fireflies and
Yeah,
staring at
yeah.
the stars, and it was a spiritual experience.
It
Like
was.
you,
And
like you
both,
could-
was a
both
spiritual
equally as educational, and one was certainly valued as
Oh.
highly as the lectures
Yeah.
going out on those Jeep rides.
Yeah.
And that's what's implanted in our souls, are those.
so,
Or Philip Greer's and all of us standing. Remember standing in the marsh?
Yes.
And I remember tasting the spartana grass, and he said, "Everybody pick one and eat this. This is the way we ate in the beginning of time." You remember that?
but
And how when we put our hands down into the mud to pull
Mud.
up
Oh,
the
the squishy.
clams,
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
it wore the hair off of the human body or whatever.
yeah, but Dr. Odom,
Sure.
Same thing. You leave the name Dr. Peter
Oh,
Paul
Peter Paul
Kellogg,
Kellogg.
which was he was the Birdman.
He would take us on bird walks and
No,
we,
Birdman.
4:30.
and we would just stop and he would identify birds through sound.
Okay.
And we would have to complete silence and just listen, and he would tell you what it was, and then we'd look for it.
Yeah.
It was,
But-
he was amazing.
But we're working, 12 hours a day, and then we're getting up
Right.
at 4:30 to go on a bird walk. But he was,
Usually on the weekends.
but the week didn't stop. But Dr. Kellogg was unbelievable. He could
was
sing bird
unbelievable.
songs. He could talk to the birds.
He came a couple times.
Yeah, a couple
too,
times. He came a couple times.
Yeah.
We,
Who
we,
did the turtles, the eggs that we go
Was
out?
that Lewis Lips?
We went out at
No,
the
Dr.
full
no,
Odom.
Dr.
moon.
Odom.
Dr.
absolutely.
Odom did it?
Odom.
Yeah,
Remember at
Dr.
the
Odom.
full moon, we'd go
Yeah.
out to
Right.
the beach.
To the
and
beach.
see
Yeah.
the-
Yeah, we organized labor for Dr. Odom on
Yeah.
on egg hunts or
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah. But this is it's 1970, and you don't realize we were at the beginning of the environmental movement. We didn't know all the pieces, how they fit together.
Ecology
That was
was a
the
new
first-
word.
Yeah.
Of the
was.
tagging of any of the turtles on Ossabaw.
Yep.
So let's talk about the process of getting from the organizational meeting in Atlanta to your first experience on the island. I know you had been here before, the various weekends, but some of you, your first day was the first day of the project, right? Is that true? I mean,
Well, I too was here for a couple weekends before the
Yeah.
actual
Yeah.
program
It was certainly my
started.
first day of the,
okay.
coming afterwards.
And you're from New York, or
I'm from New York. I'm a city girl.
Uh-huh.
I mean, it was, but having it explained to us, you were very well prepared for what was going to happen. It's just visually you were not
And
prepared,
sense-
and spiritually you weren't prepared because
Sensing the no-see-ums.
no, they told you about the bugs, they told you about the snakes, they told you about all the dangers. They were warning you about stuff, but you weren't prepared for how you were going to fall in love with the place.
Okay.
Larry, had you been here before?
Yeah, I'd been here
And your
before
dad?
because I was helping my father. My father was John Earl, who was working on a photography book with Jimmy Valentine on the coast, and I came down some to help him on the book, and so forth.
But he came down too when we were down
Yeah,
there.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he was here several
yeah, he
times.
was. I know he was on some of the work party things.
No, but I mean, he came as a kind of a lecturer also. and
Okay,
we
yeah,
walked
I
around-
couldn't even remember if he
Yeah,
did or
no, he
not.
did.
He was
He
another.
did.
He was another.
Okay.
He was another like Dr. Odom, and and all the folks. But he was important.
So you were prepared, but what were the surprises? What were the parts you weren't prepared for? And you said one, but
Well, I guess one thing is that when we first got here, I came onto the island cold. I think I'd been to one organizational meeting before we came down. I'd learned about this by word of mouth from friends. We finally connected last night. It was friends of Rob's here, and within the first 3 days, the bugs had gotten to us tremendously because it affected our ability to sleep. You're swatting bugs on you all night long, and in the dawn, they're already there all around you. And by about 3 days, we kind of got
We seemed to get
short on
acclimated.
temper.
Well,
What?
I think we got acclimated
Yeah, we
to it.
did
I mean,
get
because I
acclimated.
remember.
Oh, eventually, yes.
I remember thinking after the first couple of days, I can't take this. I'm eating bugs. I'm
Breathing bugs.
I'm breathing bugs. I'm visualizing them when my eyes are closed. But after about a week,
It didn't-
That's
Yeah.
because nobody
didn't
washed.
bother us
Nobody washed for a week, and finally the bug said, "Hell no." No, not washing, I believe, was a serious protection against the animal.
And the garlic.
yeah, I think the bugs are one of the things that you could never have prepared for.
I think one of the unexpected things was just the effect of being in nature for so long a period of time. 'Cause
Sure.
I loved nature before I came here, but I never lived for any kind of extended period, and it definitely affects you, and it changes you, and you really understand what it means to be connected to it, and so that's part of ecology too. If you can't connect with nature, you're not going to care about it. So I think that really.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one thing to go, say, camping on a weekend or for
Sure.
a week, and you bring your stuff and you're prepared for it. This was a several-month-long thing, and we had to adapt to what was here and learn to enjoy it. because in the human spirit, you either enjoy it or you leave the island, I guess is what some people did here.
I'm
Yeah,
thinking of the word that's used in education, immersion. That's what we did.
Yes, we were.
We were
Yes.
immersed. We learned through immersion, which is
What make that? I think it was Harriet or maybe Harriet Morrow or somebody, some group that every week somebody went in town to go buy staples, which I refused to do. But I can remember it was after the third or fourth week, I think it was Harriet or Gilmore, went in, they went to Kmart and they came back and they said, it was scary. There were these purples and these yellows and there were all these bright colors and I'm not going back.
Can I tell you, when I got off the island,
Yes, culture shock.
when I went into a supermarket, I went, wow, look at all this food, and it's so organized, and I can just take it.
There was a culture shock.
There definitely was, yeah.
I was driving on the freeway in Atlanta right after I got back, and I saw there was cardboard on the highway, and I thought it was a cow.
I think all of us, we all dealt with the same, if you want to call them hardships, although I personally didn't think of any of it that way. I mean, the bugs, the cold water showers, having to prepare our own, food and all that. It was so much offset by just the environment we were in that we just all, took it in stride.
Beauty.
It was just
It was just what you
a
had
new
to
way
do.
of living, but it was a great way of living.
But we all knew it was a once in a lifetime opportunity.
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
There was no question about that. Drove it.
Right.
That coming to an island so pristine, so undiscovered for 3 months.
Right.
First of all, we'd never have 3 months off in our lives again.
Right.
No.
And haven't since,
and
right?
haven't since. Okay, but just we knew what we were part of when we were there. Okay, and even though it was even though it was labor is hard. I tell this story as very that when we first of all we had to survive. We had to eat. Okay, and so you had to. I think as I remember the story, you had to hunt the food. You had to clean the food.
Clean it.
You had to cook the food and you had to eat it, and you could not do all 4 of those. You had to leave one of the steps out because otherwise you were eating Mabel. I mean, so whoever, there were some exceptions. Clams didn't fall into that category, okay? But if it walked around and you could look at it, that you could do 3 of the 4 things, but you had to do the 4th, you couldn't do all of them. You had some separation. So if you cleaned it, you gave it, to the cook, and then you come back and eat it and be happy, right?
At the beginning, food was very generously provided with the meat, but I think toward the end there was an effort to try to
Survival.
figure out if we could survive
could
on
do
No,
it
but
ourselves,
we caught turkeys. Somebody says
did.
we didn't. We caught turkeys. I can remember pulling feathers off a turkey hanging up outside the cookhouse.
Yeah, but we
Right.
didn't run it down.
I think I remember running it down. You think you don't?
But
No,
we
you didn't run it down, but I
fished
think I
and
remember running it
crabbed
down.
and-
So-
You
Yeah,
ran
we-
down in turkey.
So how was
Yes. With enough people.
how was the food provided? I mean, it came in boatloads and.
Well, no, my
There was
memory. We
garden.
took we finally established crews. Somebody was the gathering crew for food, and then there was a cooking
gardener.
garden crew. But I can remember, being given food duty, and I go out. We go seining in the river. We catch fish. We go
Yeah, that's why I
go
laughed when
crabbing,
you
go
said
clamming.
provided.
Well,
you know.
he said the early phase, the food was provided,
Yeah.
which I
Yeah,
think
they
is
did.
that's the way I read
Was
it.
provided.
Yes.
Okay.
And of
And-
course the garden,
And the
the
right,
garden,
the garden and
was
the groceries.
our own garden.
But interesting to me is that you started that in April, so
Yeah.
it was
It was mature.
I can remember times when we went to get our groceries, and of course, we bought bananas or whatever, and by the time they got all the way across and down the truck ride down to the, and everything piled on top, it was like
Banana
not
pudding.
bananas anymore.
But we got our
But
staples.
we did
Staples.
get those kinds of things from town.
We got sugar and
Sugar,
flour
yeah.
and that kind of stuff from town.
But based on the number of times we ate okra, we didn't get much from inland that I remember, because we had
Green beans,
We had
butter beans,
Lots of
All the
beans,
beans.
Beans,
tomatoes,
yeah.
every way you can eat a tomato.
because we had a 2-acre garden.
It was
Yep.
huge, yeah.
And then the other part of the garden was to coordinate putting up
How many peas did we shell and give to the big house?
Tons of
Oh yeah, we
food
we
that
did
was
do that.
frozen
Yeah.
at North End.
We would sit on these rockers, I mean, just with
right.
with a bucket in front of us, just rocking and
Shelling
shelling peas.
No, they come
you
down
know?
and get us, and we go out picking the bushel or two, they bring back here and put it all away, and it
And that's what OIP,
where to go?
and that's what the OIP program, that was food for that,
Okay.
Right,
for the year-round program.
yeah. They froze it, they canned it,
Okay.
And we also had a milk cow, and we had
But you understand how the day that you drove up, because I came in a few days later because I was with my family, but there was no place to stay.
right.
It was here you go,
Yeah, let's talk about that.
here you go,
Yeah.
there you
And-
go. Talk-
Nobody told me
The
to bring a
stable.
tent.
Oh, I
the
didn't-
stable was there.
Yeah, but it wasn't set up for camping.
There
It
was
was
no-
not- because we-
There was no
There was-
floor.
It was
there
a
was
big
no
tent.
floor.
It was a
There
big
was one
tent.
big tent where we
One
stayed.
The
at.
big
All- we
tent,
all
and then
stayed in one
Ginger had
tent.
a tent.
Got
or
a
was that
picture of me walking.
Yeah,
on
yeah,
it
Ginger
in the
had a
morning.
tent.
And so you immediately started building, some shelter.
Yes.
Sort of.
I think we had
After
cleaned
working
up,
at
there
the-
were some existing buildings that we had cleaned up on those work weekends, and I don't remember whether we made them.
They weren't
There
There
ready.
was a
Well,
floor that
yeah.
had to be put into the stable.
We moved into the stable pretty
It was
quickly.
a
But how much of
barn.
that did we do?
It was a horse barn with a dirt
I
floor.
don't think they'd set the sawmill up until we came down
Right.
to live
Right.
here.
For the summer.
So when they set the sawmill up, then we worked the sawmill to get materials to do that. But we had to cut our own lumber to do everything we did.
Right.
Now the trees must have already been there, because I don't ever remember cutting down.
No,
They
they must
had
have,
a
the
logging-
logs,
they had a
the
logging
logs
crew.
must have
Yeah,
come.
they
They
like
had a
The logging crew
that-
came in, it was all
delivered
piled up.
logs.
Yeah.
The people that
Yeah.
ran the actual physical saw,
I ran the saw.
and you ran the saw?
Ran the saw.
And the carriage and the whole thing?
Yep.
Yeah. I was, I guess I was just a peon there.
You were
but
digging in the sawdust.
I was, yeah, whatever needed to be done, but when I was there, they were actually, I guess, trained people that had done the logging and brought it in and were
I have to
cutting it
admit,
up.
No, I just
we were
worked with
stacking it.
Roger. Roger ran the sawmill when we were there.
Was he?
That was
So it wasn't a professional crew that came
No, the
in?
professional crew timbered, I believe, and brought logs in
Okay.
behind
it's
us.
a shame
Okay.
John's not here. He knew that. John
By professional.
made furniture. He
Me
made
too.
many,
Maybe they
many
just had a
chairs
stand in
and
that day and you and I were there.
tables.
And Bob, were you a leader on the construction projects?
No, I don't remember us having any real leaders. We just all worked together. I mean,
Yeah.
We,
that was
we
another
had, we,
good, good thing about the experience, as I recall. We just all, there wasn't a boss. We just
Worked it out
did what we
together.
needed to
That's
do.
right.
Somehow
Well, we-
worked out the
Well,
organization.
we did have meetings that said we needed to organize, because at
Yeah.
first it was a little chaotic, because nobody knew who was gonna,
Do
who was
what?
gonna do what. But so we organized, we had a meeting and organized committees.
Right, and I think we had regular meetings.
Yeah, we did
weekly,
have
right?
regular meetings.
Yeah.
Well,
But it took us
dinner
time
was
to
a
figure
meeting.
out you needed to do that.
Sure.
But I think one of the things is with the different duties and disciplines that we were doing on the island, and some of that rotated where some people would spend time in the kitchen, others spend time in the garden, and we'd have certain duties we do during the day, and then the other times we could build, and the discussion of building is like, okay, well, we're gonna work on one person's house, and if you're doing that, well, that might get built, but where am I down the pipeline? Am I gonna be the last person to get some kind of abode built where now I can sleep, bug-free? And like I said, probably by the end of the first or the second week, we kind of realized that people were gonna try to build their own in their time and work together, and we'd coordinate with the sawmill how much lumber we needed or what length we could get, and we'd go through the process of getting that from what I can remember. But because I can remember I had started building, and I'm being told that I told somebody that I knew how to build something, and I really didn't. I just had ideas in my head, and we picked a site and a nice spot out there at the edge of the marsh, and decided that we'd build a building, and we had limits by the amount of lumber that was there, but Mike McCarty, he worked with us for a while, and then he decided, well, I'm going to go ahead and build my own, and he and I think Rick Smith built their own separate house, and theirs was done long before mine was finished. And of course mine was it's all gone, but I was able to actually see that my structure's still out there,
That's
although
right.
it's in
Last
total
night.
collapse, but it's, at least it's
We
still
saw
there.
it last night.
And I think another part of that too that we talked about last night was the fact that for showers we were just pumping water out of the artesian well and it was freezing. So we finally worked out a system of pumping it up to a tank, which I don't know
It's
where
a
the tank
55
came from.
gallon drum, wasn't it?
That's
Yeah.
bigger than
Yeah, it was
that,
an
much
actual
bigger
drum.
than
The
that.
water would at least warm up during the day, and then it was a scramble to the shower at the end of the day.
Yeah, but
Who would get some warm water? And
Oh, that was
And
a
warm
happy
was a
day.
relative
That
term.
was
It
a-
was
Yeah, right,
never
that's right.
really
Got the
warm.
But I think Harriet
And-
said it well though. She said you could tell when somebody was taking a shower because they went,
Oh, yeah. And showers were quick. You did not linger in that shower.
But we also ended up with water in the kitchen
Yeah,
too.
that
which
was part, that
that
was,
was-
we developed a water distribution system where we would put water in a tower.
Yeah.
That it could moderate the temperature of it, but it would also would give us pressure to put an underground hose that
Because-
would go over to the kitchen, which was part of the infrastructure.
but at
that
the
That was
beginning,
brilliant,
the
by
beginning
the
was
way, I just
it was a
wanna
hand
say.
pump,
It
was
wasn't
a
it?
hand
It was a
pump.
hand
We
pump.
took a shower
With
every
the, with the,
day.
right, with a
Yeah.
bucket, we take a hand pump bucket and walk it over the kitchen. I mean,
Yeah.
it was,
And, and backing up a little bit about the kitchen duties, I think we divided up into teams.
Yeah.
And everybody had to take their turn cooking, cleaning.
I think that's one of the first formalized things that happened.
Right.
You got a,
You got a duty.
You got to do, but there was a team for the kitchen,
Right.
but like two of the people had to do the food gathering, two of
That's
the people
right.
did the cooking, two of the people did the cleaning, and you were assigned for a day because
Rotate.
that crew had to get up
They
at
worked all day.
6
Early.
o'clock,
They worked
and
all
they
day,
worked
yeah.
from 6 o'clock and they worked until everything was cleaned up. So that was a that
Long
was
day.
that was a major thing, but.
And everyone rotated
Everybody
through
rotated
that.
through
There-
it. Now, you did want to make sure that you had some good cooks
On your team.
on your team.
Yeah, you
Because
got,
otherwise-
you got two bad
Dishwasher.
cooks
I'm
together.
supposed
And it was in the
ask.
best interest of everybody in the group to make sure there was at least one cook and then one
Right,
of the
right.
groups.
John asked me to ask if anybody remembers how much criticism he had when he had to cook. He cooked the venison, and he said nobody liked it, and it was just really, nobody remembers the venison.
I don't really remember.
Of course,
Nobody-
he
nobody-
remembers.
Of course.
Nobody. The only thing I do believe, the only thing that people finally came to complain about the food, and as I still do, is that not okra again. Okay, because at the end of the summer, it was the only green vegetable we had.
Well, okra grew, I mean, it was prolific
Yeah.
in that garden. It was
And the
prolific.
tomatoes. We
And
had
tomatoes,
tomatoes
yeah.
all the way
Yeah.
around the
Yeah.
And we
building.
learned that fried okra is good, boiled okra is not necessarily.
Okra,
So it did have
and
its
okra and
place.
tomatoes are great.
Yeah.
Have you seen Don Horton's report at the end of the year?
No, that's it.
No.
He wrote a kind of a sophisticated analysis of the social stratification and the anthropological meaning, and one of the points was that there were social tensions and social divisions, and the group work wasn't always perfect,
Oh, awesome.
which is not too surprising with 30 people.
But the good news is, this social group was homogeneous.
You mean these 8?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's the other ones didn't come.
Yeah, when I heard Peter Schellhorn was coming, I said, yeah, I'll come too.
It's funny, I don't.
Yeah, but
remember.
that's not
we-
unusual.
It was remarkable how well we got along
See-
for a bunch of strangers
Yeah.
being thrown in together
Yeah.
and
Agreed
relying
with
on
that.
each other for daily living. I mean,
Yeah.
2 or 3 people couldn't have done what we did. It took a big enough group where you could
Yeah.
have a small cooking crew and so forth.
And there
people
were
could
people
be-
from different backgrounds
Very
because it was so varied. There were people from rural Georgia and as far away as New England. And I guess some even from out west. I don't remember all the different places. And there were familiarizations, I guess social trappings or whatever that we had from urban environments versus others. And it did seem as though that there were, I don't want to call it cliques to a detriment, but there were associations and social groups that were amongst us that were just caused because of just like, how you become pals with a different group in down in Savannah. You don't know everybody, but you do find a
Some
group of
of
people
mine.
that you
It
live
was just a
and like with.
microcosm of any little small community. I mean, there were people who came together for reasons because they were similar, the people who came together because they were so different and were interested in each other. But it was really, in terms of a social network, I think it was a microcosm of any given community.
You're right, but we're in the midst of the anti-war movement, okay,
Yeah.
regarding the Vietnam War, and there were some divisions on that subject, okay?
Yes.
All right, there were people that were on the island that were clearly against the war, and there were some people that were getting ready to
Go to Canada.
go, or getting ready to
Or
go
go to war.
Go to war. Okay, I mean there were some, whether for whatever reason, but there was the same social stresses that were going on in the country
We're going on in
going
we're
on
going on there.
in our community.
Okay. I mean, among the points he made was people who were slacking off on their jobs at work, and leaders who took charge, which would happen in any social
I
group.
don't know that anybody that just decided to not do stuff got in trouble. Nobody got their rations taken away.
But do you remember anyone who didn't do? I mean, some did more. Some were capable of more than others. But
Yeah.
I don't think there was anyone that was just laying
I don't
around on a
remember. I
hammock.
don't remember anybody we thought was a slacker. Okay,
No.
now, like you say, some did more than others, but I don't remember anybody being penalized for that. And some people had, some people that were really good in the kitchen got more kitchen duty. Because they did, and then they didn't go cut, fence posts and and work in the field because that was more valuable.
I think what eventually happened is people used the skills that they had.
Yeah.
We weren't engineers. We were better in the kitchen. Not that I wanted that to be a male-female thing, but we weren't. We weren't going to be able to build a water system. So you used what skills that you had.
Yeah, they wanted the island. The island itself demanded that we give some labor to the island, and so it was a question of who's going to go out and work on the sawmill. Well, I volunteered to do it all the time because I was in the best physical shape of my life when I left this island.
So was I.
Yeah,
So was
I mean,
So was
I was buff.
I
You
was
know,
a seagull.
another thing I think that happened as an outcome of the entire experiment experience was that we all had. It was life-changing for every
Thank
person.
you.
Yes,
Yes, it
thank you.
was.
It was life-changing.
Totally.
Creating whole new concepts of what we would do when we were not here, and it would all reflect back on this experience.
But you were talking, but again, and I think, but making the group work as a whole too. There was no order. It had to be negotiated. It wasn't. Nobody was elected. You think somebody was elected president? I don't remember that.
I wasn't elected. I think we just. I remember Paul being sort of deemed a leader for a while.
For a period.
Yeah,
For
but
a short period of time.
I remember that. I remember them working together and figuring out how to do stuff better, more, but than that.
Oh yeah. Well, the cruise. I mean, that's what I remember most, is working together on cruise.
There were no projects that involved everybody.
That's right.
Yeah.
There was no big project where it really took, like,
The entire group.
Right.
yeah.
No,
Unless
except-
it was a day at the beach.
The best way to say it, the only project involved everybody is going to the beach.
Sitting around the campfire.
Yeah.
Sitting around a campfire,
Singing songs.
the pig roast that Roger would have a couple.
Yeah.
We had a pig roast a couple times up on the beach.
That involved everyone.
Yeah.
That, like July 4th, we had one or something that involved everybody.
But those were
Those are exceptions.
those were the entertainment. That wasn't the work.
That wasn't the work.
Well, the
Is it
trips to
your-
the main house for the.
Oh yeah. Right. No.
That was a big.
Our main house.
Evening.
So yeah, let's hear about the guests and the educational side and the lectures and all that.
Well, of course, you waited 40 years to ask us this question, but we do have vivid memories.
Okay.
Some really amazing.
And this was a regular thing? You said something
Yeah,
about
yeah,
every Saturday? Every Saturday?
Was it every
Every
Saturday?
Saturday night. No.
Saturday
every
night,
Saturday?
big
Every
house.
Saturday night, big
Saturday
house.
night
Every
at the
Saturday.
big house.
Ice cream
And
after
electric.
dinner. We went.
No bugs and
we went
pool
after dinner.
floor.
I didn't know it was every Saturday.
Yeah, we went after dinner.
It was every Saturday night after dinner. We watched them. We watched the same movie 4 or 5 times.
No.
One of Clifford's?
I'll go along.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. We watched the one with the wind chimes or whatever it was,
They were on Mr. West.
and the one with
weren't they?
yeah, Clifford.
Mr. West?
Clifford.
Yeah. But you
And
need
the
to say
one
that.
with-
They were Mr. West?
Botticelli,
And,
yeah.
and the one with the crier, with
Scream.
Screamer.
Edward Monk.
Edward Monk.
Had Monk's.
He had,
Oh,
he had
yes.
2 artistic films that he made about 2 artists, and we actually
And one was Monk, and who was
Clifford
it?
B. West.
one was Monk,
I know.
and the other one is we can't think of the guy's. He's Botticelli.
Botticelli,
Was it
wasn't
Botticelli?
Botticelli.
I don't remember.
Oh, yeah, that was,
Yeah. And we would actually we would ask to see it again.
Just to be
Have
nice.
ice cream.
Have ice cream.
we were well trained. Ice cream.
Ice cream and to be out of the bus.
There was no ice cream.
dogs.
It's
It's
like,
middle
the,
place.
it's like the chimpanzee that punches the button. Ah.
But
I sure would like to see that movie again.
but we would all lay on the floor to watch the movies. We wouldn't sit in the chairs, lay on the floor. You say it's not air conditioned; it felt air conditioned.
Oh, yeah.
And half of us would sleep. Okay, and then when lights came back on, we'd go like this to make sure. Oh, great!
And it was an evening out for us. We would all get dressed in our cleanest clothes,
our cleanest.
which is
Best
relative.
t-shirts.
You know?
A long skirt. I remember. Yes. Something about fabric.
And who else was there besides the West?
Well, if we had any
Was it
guest
OIP
lecturer
too?
that came in, Dr. Kellogg
Okay.
or
Philip Greer, Bob Haney.
Haney, Greer,
Brisbane.
Dr.
Brisbane.
Odom.
Wasn't there another couple that was staying there with the Wests? And
Charles Woods.
The Woods.
Woods, okay, the
Yeah.
Woods, yeah.
Oh,
Remember?
from
And he would talk
Colorado.
about,
Yes.
remember Charles Woods?
And
The
what-
theater, he was a
I think there were.
Yes. Oh my
Mr.
God, I
West's
forgot
sister.
all about
He was
him.
married to Clifford's sister.
I forgot all about him. Yeah.
Do y'all remember Mr. West's birthday party that we had for him? And Missy and I had to come to the north end to make the cake. And I asked him what his favorite was, and he said chocolate. So we made a chocolate cake, and we decided to make it in the shape of the island. And when we got there on the truck, the end of the cake caved in, and I made a speech and said, "There's nothing symbolic about the north end of the island."
Now I know Sandy, and I know a lot about her, but I don't know much about Clifford. So tell me a little bit about him.
Very, very interesting man. I think quite knowledgeable, quite remarkable in his gifts and talents.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly loved the island and what it represented.
But I think he had a lot less to do with us than Sandy did.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I remember him coming to the stable one day, and I had made a bookcase, and he walked in and he said, "I think that's ready for the Harvard classics."
Roger, he probably had a great influence over us because he was the crew foreman. Okay, so if we worked parties, we went out with Roger. If we did any butchering, it was under Roger's supervision. So when we butchered a hog, and I hate to tell you how many hogs we butchered that were full of babies, which was
Oh, Rob, you
unbelievable.
didn't have to tell us that now.
No, but I mean, it was an interesting experience when you go to butcher a hog and you get this
Sure.
hog fattened up. You butcher it and you go, uh-oh, it wasn't as fat as I thought it was. It wasn't as much food as you thought. But he was the one that we came down. He led the butchering operations. We prepare the meat, put it in the freezer up here, and then that was our supply. When we didn't get deer, a hog,
Beef.
a cow, but they're all local. I mean, all homegrown.
Eggs are
You know?
eggs.
We had chicken.
We had chickens.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And
But we came up and butchered those, and they were kept up here. But we come up and get it if we needed, wanted something, take it back. But it was and that's why I say you don't want to hear about the butchering part. But that's why that was where the rule came from. Is you caught a wild hog, fattened it up for a couple weeks to get it on the grain for a few weeks, so it had a taste to it. Because you didn't want to eat a wild hog fresh.
And I think that part of the butchering was a part of a huge learning experience for a lot of people to realize, we're used to going and buying our bacon in the
Yep.
store.
Right.
Yep.
Mhm.
How'd it get there?
Yep.
Well, here's how.
That's right. But we had, as a result, we had bacon, but we knew where it came from. But again,
Yeah.
that if you were part of cutting and cleaning that hog up, you weren't cooking the bacon and eating it.
We had a wonderful wood stove, and that was when I first learned how to make bread. And I baked bread, and it was out of the kitchen. It was a wood stove.
Yeah, I don't know if you've seen Mora's history.
Morris.
Not recently.
Okay.
I have, yeah.
Well, it's got a little day-by-day stuff, so I thought I might, ask if her account of June 15th or April 12th or August 12th is correct.
Can we can send that to us?
I guess I need one.
I don't know if I'm going to remember June 14th, 1972.
Thank you for doing
I do. I was swatting bugs.
But she is corroborating, or you're corroborating her. She talks about the pain of slaughtering a hog with fetal pigs. She talks about the okra and how she's never going to eat another bite of okra.
So I must have read this thing before I came down.
I don't know.
I think it's a vivid memory for a lot of people.
And the original is in the archives, and it's beautifully. She has an artistic touch and has little drawings and calligraphy, and it's very nice.
And she gives me credit for getting my treehouse built in 3 days, which is right.
She would be very
You
happy to
did?
hear
Yeah,
that. I
look
don't
at
think
that.
she knows
Love
that.
treehouse done in 3 days. It's really beautiful.
That is.
On that Friday, June 26th, which was my birthday, he talks about the sunset, and that was one of the spiritual experiences I had involving nature. That was such an incredible sunset.
And we saw that last night, which was so nice about going down there last night, because it was awesome. The sunset.
Yeah, I know. But there was like a turquoise color to that sunset. It just went on, and we were all at the beach, is what it was. And I guess we had spread out along the beach, and different people were different ways. But it totally affected me on a deep level.
This is wonderful.
Yeah, this is wonderful.
That's
I-
great.
Just looking at this about Rob's Troop House being done in 3 days, it was finished on July the 7th, which means that he didn't start that till actually the 4th of July, so we were here for a month before he could even start on his dwelling.
Yeah, yeah.
So where were you sleeping for a month?
In
Around.
hammocks.
Well, speaking of that,
That's all you're getting.
I remember that when we first got here, I slept just on a cot, a folding cot with a sheet over me to keep the bugs off, covered in bug spray, just out in the open
Wow.
for a few days, and then after that, I guess it was inside the tent or the stable, in different places.
But my treehouse inspiration was partly bug driven,
okay.
because I don't know whether the theory is true or not, but I thought if I got high enough up in the air, I'd be above the gnat line. And it turned out to be fairly true with especially you pick up a better breeze up in the air.
I think they cycled with the full moon too, and we arrived there, as I recall, pretty close to a full moon, and
Yeah.
that's when the gnats were the worst.
Well, is it a full moon today? Because the gnats were terrible last
Well,
night.
this was a full moon a few days ago.
Yeah, yeah.
See, there's all these theories about the bugs.
I
And
love
this about Mike got leeches.
Oh.
I remember
Yeah, I
that.
remember
Oh, I
that.
remember
Remember
Mike's
that.
leeches,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah.
Yeah, well, speaking of that, you're missing the nightly tick checks.
Oh,
There-
yeah.
There was a,
Oh yeah.
if nothing brought us closer, it was
The tick check?
Tick checks,
Oh,
because
look.
That was sort of a personal thing.
no, but you couldn't find the ticks
were
in all the
like
places by
chimpanzees.
yourself.
Yeah.
I can remember having 30 or 40 on me at a time.
Chimpanzees on each other's, one would be behind
That's
one,
right.
one would be pulling stuff.
Because we would get the small ones too, and they're just developing, and they were hard to get. The
Yeah, I
little
mean,
bitty ones.
you'd be digging through your friends'
You'd
or
find them in
associates'
places you
scalp,
never.
yeah.
Yeah,
I'd
but
find
you
them on
could-
my earlobe.
But if you go,
anywhere.
what is this back here, please? Would you look at that? Yeah, oh, that's one, all right.
And look at this on Wednesday, August 12th and August the 14th. The A-frame was finished, and then Mike and Rick's house was finished.
Wow.
Like 2 days
Well,
apart.
August 12th?
and August 14th.
Well, and that's right, because I do remember when the A-frame is like they lived in about
Racing.
2 weeks before we left.
Yeah.
Yeah, so-
And we didn't.
I never got to sleep in it.
We actually
You
got
never
it
slept in it?
completed, but
Never.
we didn't have screening. So
Right.
it was still
So it
open
was
to the
still buggy?
elements. And it took a time or whatever. We waited a week or so before they could get into the mainland to get cheesecloth, I think is what we put on it eventually for the summer. It was later closed in for winter people in the next Genesis project.
Right.
But we had to do that, then get it installed. And I think I only got to sleep in it one or at most 2 nights before we left
Well,
the island.
So you're
because
leaving it for the next crew.
that's part of what we were here for.
Uh-huh.
We were here to establish an ongoing project, and all our work we knew was going to be for posterity.
Mike and Bob's still out in the jungle deep.
I'd forgotten about the whale that washed up on.
Yeah, I remember
Oh,
that.
I remember
was
that,
terrible.
yeah.
See, I thought that the most interesting night was about 2 weeks into getting here. There was a full moon and we all went out on the beach.
What day are you looking at here?
I'm not sure if it's in the journal.
Oh,
And on that night, all the couples formed. They did.
Well, of course.
Everybody
on a full
paired
moon.
up. And after that, there was never, as far as I knew, there was never any fight about it. That's just the way it was for the duration.
But
Am I right?
I
Does
think
everybody
I think it
remember
was laissez-faire. Let's put it that way. There was no struggling. Everybody cooperated. But I do want to add that I do remember though when we got heavy rains, we'd all run out and get a shower.
Yeah.
yes.
Because it was warm water versus the cold water, and you go. I mean, you wouldn't do that in the middle of the night, but it was so refreshing to just get clean, right? A good
Yeah.
clean shower.
Come on, we weren't clean for 3 months.
It wasn't like you hid it. It wasn't like you hid. You know, you went, oh my. Ah.
Right. Got your clothes washed at
That's
the
right.
same time.
That's right. The other pair. We brought down more clothes this 2 days than we brought
3
for
months.
the entire summer. You know. Oh, you have to talk about that. The music.
Kathy Hatfield.
Kathy Hatfield.
There were
Yeah,
there were
and
3 or
she-
4
Now,
guitars.
She was not a member of Genesis. She would come down for special events to entertain.
She's the one that taught the dolphin song I sang last night.
She and Missy and Peter would play, and so those were some of the
Did-
greatest nights.
Group sings.
Missy played
a lot of group
banjo.
sings.
Yeah, a lot of group sings.
And so who was she? Because she appears in lots of these.
Missy was Dr. Greer's daughter.
No, I mean Kathy
Yeah, but how did
Hatfield.
Kathy got here?
okay.
Well,
A friend.
Uh-oh, you know something?
Do you know?
That one that I passed around earlier on April Fool's Day, she performed that night too.
I don't remember how she got here. Peter, do you remember?
I don't.
Because we went to see her in Atlanta afterward.
Just
I mean,
a
she was
friend
a
of
performer.
people that had been here.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I don't know.
she was
I-
a
first
wonderful
I reckon-
singer.
Remember her was on Jekyll. Didn't we all go to Jekyll
We
one time?
No,
did.
no,
It was,
Cumberland.
It was Cumberland?
Cumberland?
Cumberland.
We went to Cumberland for the first Earth Day when they transferred Cumberland to the when it got bought. It became it was that year Cumberland.
That was in
Well,
April.
actually, it was at Jekyll, though. It was about Cumberland, but it was.
Oh, was it Jekyll?
It was at Jekyll, yeah.
Okay, but I'm sorry.
Do you remember John Milton?
Yeah, he was on
Yes.
that
Can
trip
you
with us.
talk about that?
I don't remember that
he
much
was
about him. I remember I liked
A
him.
friend of Bob Haney's, and I remember he came and he was a speaker or something like that.
But he went with us to Jekyll for
Right,
that rally,
right.
yeah.
And Bob Haney took some, maybe small group, I don't know how many, to Defusky also at one point.
Yeah, I didn't go on
No,
that.
didn't go on that.
No, this is in the midst of your 2 months here. You'd get in a boat,
3 months.
and you'd get in a boat and go to Defusky.
Well, we went one
remember that.
time, and
Mhm.
it was just to see what
Hmm
what was happening there. I think there was just
And Haney led that.
yes, and I think there was just a real focus on all the islands, at all the barrier
Because
islands.
they were trying to save the barrier islands.
What to
you
do
know.
to keep from developing them,
Mhm.
and what could be done to preserve and protect, and so we were,
And did you have any direct connection with any of the environmental politics, any of the legislators, or?
No,
We
we
were
were just
here up in
helps-
comfortable Atlanta.
Yeah,
We were supporting the people that were
So, that were,
doing that.
We were part of a student movement to the extent that that's what was driving it. You know,
And
but no-
I mean, but someone like Gene Odom is lobbying.
yes,
the-
right.
and-
No, but he used the student. He used his platform at the university to push that agenda in a positive way.
Mhm.
And when they called on us to rally, we were there.
Right.
Uh-huh.
In fact, I'm so glad that this was written, what Missy, is I very much remember on July 25th, I remember Missy sitting in that big house, and we can do this, she was talking about how we can do this, and I remember thinking, yes, we will do this. I remember being amazed when I got off Ossabaw that they're still making cars. They still need to be making.
I was
Apparently they hadn't heard the
overwhelmed in a
message.
grocery store. You were-
oh, yeah.
Peter, can you play this song?
Gonna be a country girl again? Can you do that? It's just C and G and
Okay,
D.
you wanna
and-
play
No, you can do it.
No, you do.
No,
No, you do it. No, you
I've
do it.
gotta concentrate on the words.
Yeah.
Um,
We need to
Are
rehearse
you
for a minute.
ready?
We have to rehearse.
We'll rehearse for a
No
minute.
camera. We're rehearsing.
No, rehearsing. Rehearsing. Hold on.
No, he's filming.
Stop.
Trust me.
Stop.
chord.
I'm gonna go somewhere else and tune this up.
No, you can't go too
Because you
far.
don't want to be tuning on camera.
All right.
No, we just let us. We want to sing a song in memory of one of our
Sure.
island friends.
One of our participants.
The daughter of a man,
Dr.
Dr.
Greer.
Greer,
Sure,
was
I-
invited
yeah.
to come, but we probably knew he wouldn't be able to come
Sure.
because of his health conditions.
Sure. Yeah.
I was
I know about
actually
that.
with him night before last.
Dr.
in
Greer?
Mildred. Yeah.
Was he excited that we were going down here?
Yes, and he's really
Did we
At
reach
the
out to
end
enough
of
to
his
reach out
life.
enough to him that he felt like he was a part of this? You think?
yes,
Good.
yes, I do.
Good.
He was glad we were getting together.
Well, how many of you were involved in any kind of any kind of research for your class projects and your the final report says no major scientific accomplishments were made in the first.
Jill's egret didn't get
Well, we had to do a lot
But
of
then
that
it,
work.
but then it mentioned, but there were some
But there
things.
were people that did.
Seining for fish, I thought was very important. That work.
I did a weaving with with Spanish moss in it. That at one point was in the main house.
I did.
I didn't know that.
I wove a blanket
You did up at the main
in the
house.
main house, and I also had a photography, exhibit too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I did
but
that.
a lot of
He's
them are
talking
supposed to be
scientific
scientific
discussion.
No, I
research.
didn't. I don't suggest to scientific at all.
Yeah.
The egrets
I
is the
think that
closest we
you-
get to the science, and that's Jill.
I think that was one of the
All right,
purposes
can you, when you
that
rehearse a
really
little bit
never got
on the song?
realized.
Yeah,
Here's
Song
here's the
never played
process.
before?
in
Oh,
the
you
later
better
years,
do it.
they had more time for the.
Right,
Right.
because
But
our
we
whole
were here. I
game
mean,
was
we
just
like
survival.
it was like just tossing us into the bowl of soup, and we were sorting ourselves out. But we knew that when we left, we would be leaving stuff behind for future groups, so it wouldn't be as hard. Because the winter right after we were there, they came in and they realized that it was going to be getting cold,
You just say it's
and
two
they
chords,
took
right?
cheesecloth off of the
It
ends of
is.
my
Truth Place City.
Just stop
building
playing.
out there, the A-frame, and they boarded it
It
up,
is a
put
city.
windows and a door in it, and put in a pot-bellied stove so that they could be warm in the winter. They had to start from scratch.
Yeah.
They'd have froze to death
Yeah.
before they ever got,
Well,
you know.
there were three of us who came back for the winter of '71 and lived in Mike and
Was Rick's?
Rick.
Was that
Rick's
Rick's?
house.
Yeah, okay.
and it had the potbelly stove. in
Yeah,
it,
but I
and it
think
was-
the A-frame I know had been closed in because when we came back it was closed in, but that was 10 years
Yes.
later, sometime.
Right, it was
was-
used the next summer too,
Okay.
for sure.
So, do you guys want to start your song?
No, we're rehearsing. You're getting the song, getting the
Okay.
Yeah, we'll rejoin with a little as
This is
the
an
commercials are
interlude.
coordinating back to the main one.
Oh yes,
But we
I'm
did this
gonna be a country girl again, with an old brown dog and a big front porch and rabbits in the hen. I tell you that's a little too low.
Broadway don't amount
To an acre of green, and I'm gonna be a country girl.
going a little higher?
Try.
You can go a little higher.
Because we're singing upstairs.
Yes, I'm gonna be a country girl again. I hear you, Harriet. With an old brown dog and a big front porch and rabbits in the pen. I tell you, all the lights on Broadway don't amount to an acre of green. And I'm gonna be a country girl again. Well, I've spent my time at studies and I've taken my degree. I've memorized my formula, my A's and B's and C's. But the lesson I learned came long ago and not from such as these. And I'm gonna be a country girl again. Oh yes, I'm gonna be a country girl again. With an old brown dog and a big front porch and rabbits in the pen. I tell you, all the lights on Broadway don't amount to an acre of green. And I'm gonna be a country girl again. I saw you rolling your eyes.
That's for Missy Greer.
That was for Missy Greer.
That was for
Yeah,
you,
that was for
Missy.
Missy Greer.
Now, can you play a song that all of us can sing? Just a Joe song?
Fishing? I'm
Fishing,
going fishing.
fishing.
Oh,
Okay.
fishing, yeah.
Fishing
I'm
song.
going
We
fishing.
know that. That's it.
Well, Jim, going
Fishing
fishing
all the time. I'm a going fishing too.
Bet your life, baby, loving wise. I catch more fish than you do. Many fish bite if you got good bait.
Here's a little something I'd like to relate.
And fish bite if you got good bait. I'm going fishing, you're going fishing, and my baby going fishing too.
Floating in a boat with a bottle of wine,
Yeah,
talking about the fishing.
mighty fine. It was more robust when we were at
Yeah,
the campfire.
you know,
We've had 40 years to forget the words.
It was dark, there was a fire.
there's a camera here. This is gonna go on our permanent record.
There's going to be a file for us, each individual.
Well, speaking of campfire times, I mean, there must have been some drugs and alcohol also as part of it.
Wasn't allowed on the
Drugs.
island.
Must have been. Why do you say that?
Because
It was.
I don't think there was-
teenagers,
I don't
they're
think
young
there was
people.
much. I don't remember.
We were
Now, you guys
teenagers, we were
doing
all
it.
young
That's
adults.
remember.
We were all young adults, right?
No, I don't think there was much, really.
It sounds like there's
Maybe a little.
a little evasion there, but that's okay.
Well, okay. Well, I mean, when people would go over to the mainland, they come back, and we had a ceremony last night at Middle Place to remember Russ Price.
Okay.
He would occasionally go over with others, and when he came back, he'd always bring back a bottle or a couple of bottles of Matisse wine from Portugal.
Oh, I don't remember those.
And we were all of drinking age. There
Yeah,
was,
sure.
and I don't know if it was smuggled in or not, but we go out and meet out at his little hut out in the cabbage palms, and we'd sit around and eat Gouda cheese and drink Matisse wine and eat olives. And we did that last night in his honor and Missy Greer's honor.
And those
They
and
are.
those Matisse bottles also ended up with candles in
Oh,
them.
Yeah.
In the
Yeah.
dining
Yeah.
area.
Yeah.
They were used.
No, that was
They were
common.
recycled.
That was common in the 70s. I remember that.
And one person who would be here if he could also is Dale Allen,
Yeah.
who lived in Decatur, just a couple of blocks from Peterborough. I don't think any of us had connected in close to 20 years since the last time we were here.
Yeah.
But he died just a few years ago of lung cancer. So, he like all of those that were on the island, they should be remembered. I'm just sad that all of them couldn't be here.
And when you say it was not permitted, I mean, was that one of
Did they
the?
say that we couldn't have?
No, no.
But I don't think they said
If they
we
did, we
couldn't have
didn't hear it.
alcohol on the island.
No.
If they did, we didn't hear it.
I wasn't at that meeting. I'm sorry.
Well, the trouble was that on the local press on the mainland, they were writing stories about just sin and
gosh.
decadence. So we were very concerned that we were going to ruin the reputation of the island. So we were very, very protective. And as we talked about it, that we were worried that the press was going to come in the inlet and just storm us one night and take pictures of everything or something. I mean, you know, it wasn't paranoid, but it just they were and the island was concerned that we protect the image of the island. So we were very well behaved, you know, as well behaved as we could be as being, you know, 19-year-olds or whatever we were.
Ron,
you know.
you remember when the Forestry Commission came
Oh,
in
yeah,
with
that-
that film?
yeah.
We resented that.
We
I
were-
remember
we were
thinking,
afraid, yeah.
we didn't want them.
Yeah, we didn't like that.
We felt this is, I don't know. Do y'all remember
But
that?
no, but and when you see the forestry film, you get a sense of the, you know,
Coolness.
well, no, they're like
There was a bias in it.
there was a bias.
Yeah.
These unusually living inhabitants of this neighborhood, or whatever it said, you know, I mean, it was not. They were.
Of course, now we're very grateful they did it.
Yeah,
because
right.
we have this
Yeah.
wonderful
But
film.
it's because people didn't have the big picture.
Yeah.
I mean, we worked so
Yeah.
hard
Yeah.
all day long.
And it was
We
like
woke
being
up with the
observed,
sun,
you know,
and
like people
we were
observing.
dependent upon each other for survival. That you know, cutting up a little bit was the only way you could survive.
The Dr. Greers and the Dr. Kellogg's and those folks understood what we were doing.
Yeah.
So when they
Yes.
came in, they were members of the family.
Yeah. Right.
Okay, they loved what we were trying to do, and so they were inside. But the forestry folks, they were outsiders.
Right. It reminds me a little bit of today when I think about where my children are and some of the things that I think I would like to tell them, but they just don't get it.
Right.
But it's perspective. And some people had that perspective.
Yeah.
We didn't quite have it at that time. I mean, we really didn't.
I'd like to say one thing here too, is like, we were here for a reason, and that was to be part of an ecological movement. And we knew that what we were doing here was in the process of trying to save Ossabaw Island from development. There were people that are out there across that sound
Yeah.
that would probably still like to develop Ossabaw Island today if they could do it, although I think the Heritage Preserve here now keeps that from happening. So there were people over there that could very easily say something detrimental about what's going on here to draw a dim light on what we were doing and what the movement was trying to do in order to destroy it and possibly still, because Ossabaw was not safe in 1970.
No.
Right.
No.
It was not.
It wasn't said, and things that I got and gathered, and a lot of this was, I think, from Bob Haney, is that he had actually showed, and I saw it, I'm a civil engineer, and I saw a preliminary drawing that he said was by a Corps of Engineers or somebody that linked
Causeway.
the
That's
causeway
right.
all
That's
the way
right.
down through the Golden Isles,
Yep.
down out into Jacksonville area, and all of them were going to be linked and developed if
That's
they
right.
had their chance to do that.
There's going to be
And,
jet service or plane service, island to
Right.
island.
Oh my
Right.
Oh,
goodness.
there was just all kinds of stuff dealing with that, and you sit there and you go, well, wait a minute, you know, Jekyll Island had already been developed, or was being developed, and one of the things that we gathered was that the fishing and shrimping industry was dying there because they were dredging marinas and ruining the ecological habitat. And being environmentally minded was what was happening. When we heard that, if we could be a part of something here that might help save this island from that devastation, then we were more than glad to be a part of it. And so things that were said detrimentally to us, there was nothing any more going on here that wasn't going on across
Sure.
the sound in
Exactly.
Savannah.
We were just under a microscope.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and there were people that didn't want us to be here. I had heard plans that Bob Haney had said that there were legislators in the legislature that had contractors in their back pockets, and they wanted to condemn this island for development. And they would written bills, and one of the bills was to create another authority that would give them the opportunity to
Like
condemn
Jekyll.
Ossabaw as well as Jekyll had been.
Yeah.
And when that was found by Haney and exposed, it didn't get voted on.
And
And then within a year or two after that, the same representative with the same guy was developing the Georgia Mountain Authority. And that was something where they could condemn land to develop a resort area or whatever, like a Jekyll Island up in the North Georgia mountains. There was just one problem to that bill as he studied it. It gave them the capacity to condemn land anywhere in the state of Georgia. And they were directing you up to North Georgia mountains.
Yeah, watch this hand.
and looking at the back end here at Ossabaw Island as well, because there was nothing that would restrict them from doing that.
And I also feel that if anybody had been able to document something really weird or bad going on here, that would have been, oh, well, it can't be
Oh yeah, well look at these people.
human sustainable without, money development.
But
Well,
so
we
the
were
press
given
did
the
come a few
impression
times
that-
while you were here, didn't they?
They did.
And were they invited by Sandy or?
Not by us.
I don't know how they got, who invited them onto the island?
I don't
press
remember
was
them. Probably I didn't want to. I don't know.
There was something in the Savannah Morning News at some point, but I don't remember. I don't
I
have.
don't
But here's
know.
another thing
It's
too.
vague.
If it's normal, they don't sell papers.
Right,
Right.
right, if we're doing well,
I know a
right.
guy that works in a construction company that does damage repair from storms and whatever. And he goes, man, it's been a horrible month. Everything's been just nice and pleasant. Our business is down, and, the press doesn't sell a lot of papers unless there's something sensational they can put in it. That happened back then, and it still happens today.
Well, we were given the impression that we had somehow screwed up, and that we were going to, at least I feel like we were given the impression, that there were too many people walking around with not enough clothes on. and the helicopters were coming by and looking for people. The gunships would come by and patrol the beach looking for naked hippies. And we definitely were given the impression that at some point, you guys screwed up, we're going to lose the island, and it's because of you.
I
Y'all
don't
remember that?
No.
Or is it just something I
Well,
made up?
Maura talks about the low plains as if she's suspicious of them.
Yeah,
Oh yeah,
we had that concern, I think.
Yeah, you could go out on the beach and you could be walking down the beach or out swimming, or there'd be a Huey coming by
Watching
with a
us,
guy
yeah.
right beside coming. And I heard at one point somebody landed on the beach, and I don't know if it was a Huey or it was. I heard
No,
there
it
was
was-
a,
it
there
was
was
a-
an
it was
actually
a plane.
maybe a winged plane
Yeah.
that fixed wing plane landed. The people came out and started approaching, and it was almost like a confrontation. They said, "Whoops, we're out of bounds. We need to get back up and leave."
They
But
were on private land.
out there at the end of the middle place over the marsh, I can remember out there working, and there were Hueys all around. This island looks very much like Vietnam to them, and it was a good training ground for
Okay.
them to be searching and whatever. And there'd be a chopper up there, a couple of 1,000 feet up in the air, and he'd tilt down like he would be doing a run right down over our place, and you could hear the snap of the sound barrier being broken as the blades,
Huh.
blade coming forward and a diving chopper will hit the sound barrier, and you hear that pop, 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 pop,
But
pop,
we're,
pop.
but we're very close to Paris Island, okay, which we're not. I mean,
We're close to Hunter Army Air Force.
I know, but in terms of training and military and stuff, I mean, it's in the flight path. But there was a place, there was a time, and I want to say it was maybe just 2 or 3 weeks before the end of our of being here, that somebody decided we hadn't accomplished anything. Okay, now which is unbelievable because we were still alive. Right? So we'd accomplished a lot.
And we hadn't killed each
We
other.
hadn't killed each other. There were no bodies. And
Some
we
of us
still-
were friends.
And we had worked
And we
hard.
worked hard.
We
and-
built
No, we
fences.
built fences and we built houses and we kept ourselves, fed but they wanted us to do more, okay? And so we then recommitted ourselves to even do more, okay? So we could have something to show at the end of our, end of our last time. That here's a paper I wrote, or here's a rug I wove, or whatever. And so
Did that originate with Mr. West, though?
it originated with one of the Wests. I don't know which one I'm going to blame, but it came from the house.
I don't think it was Sandy.
Well, I don't know,
No.
but they wanted us. We reinvigorated and reproved ourselves. Now, I think that may have been when Paul left. Okay, was when we were re-challenged to accomplish something. Okay, because people did leave for different purposes, and we can't remember why all of them left. We don't
No.
agree on why any of them left, except we think a few left at the beginning because it was
Because of the
too
bugs.
The bugs. it was just too tough.
Yeah.
And then a few left during the process because I don't know. I don't know how to divide I don't know how to divide the orientation of the people on the island. Whether it was anti-war or pro-war, whether it was Democrats or Republicans. I don't know what it was. Okay, whether it was I don't know, but there were
There were
different
differences.
views,
Yeah.
okay? And I do think that some of the folks that had different views decided that they weren't gonna win that battle, and instead of trying to integrate, said goodbye.
And that's
Okay.
Paul Vogt?
No, that's not Paul.
No,
Vogt.
that wasn't
No,
Paul.
No, that was,
That wasn't Paul.
But Paul left.
Paul
Paul
left, but I think Paul left around
He left towards the end.
he left I think he left in that challenge period when somebody said you're not doing enough because he felt like he'd done a hell of a lot.
Well, we
And
all felt like we had
we all
done a
had.
hell of a lot.
No,
I
we
mean,
all, that was, I can remember, we were called to the house for a meeting that
Sure.
one Saturday night and read the riot act,
Yeah, okay.
yeah, I remember that.
you know, and
Was it when Russ left shortly after that too?
I wouldn't, there was some people left around that issue because people had worked hard. But,
I just think so many times people didn't understand our day to day.
yeah,
Our day to day was pretty grueling.
they didn't see us get up at 6:30 and start cooking.
Now,
you know?
there was no long commute and wait in traffic and stuff like that, and having to hear from the boss over your shoulder, but there was lots of work that was done. You know.
And I'm not sure that we, at least speaking for myself, that we understood why we had been brought to this island. You know, that
You just wanted to join the circle,
I
Peter.
wanted to come and have a great time and everything, and then it turned out that we were here on a mission that wasn't really well defined because nobody really knew what the mission was anyway. Even the people that we knew, they were trying to save the island.
That was the beauty of it.
Yeah.
though.
And we knew that the island could be taxed out from under them or seized or whatever, and somehow we were there trying to save this thing. We were instrumental somehow.
It's showing that there were other uses and purposes that could occur on the island. and
Right.
creating
Right, that it
things
could be used as an educational resource. My understanding was that they could be used as an educational resource for college kids,
Yeah,
and that's
yeah.
what we were trying to establish.
That's right.
Right, and your question about scientific studies is a good one because you're right. No, we don't have anything on paper, but life itself was the experiment.
Right.
Sure.
But all the
Right.
all the
It was-
other
it
years
was-
had all the other years after us had an infrastructure and some housing. Okay.
Yeah, we had to prepare.
We
We
had
had-
to
we
we
had
had
to
to
do
create the infrastructure for this movement to go on. We didn't know that's what we were doing, but that's what we were doing.
And
Yeah,
there
I don't
never
think they
were.
slept 26, 28 people on the island at one
There
time
were,
ever
there were
again after
never
that.
That's right.
30, 28 participants after that. It was 15 or 10.
Yeah.
Well, and we haven't talked much about Sandy, so how often did you interact with her? What were your impressions?
Well, at least
She's
every
wonderful.
She
yeah.
was
yeah.
Wonderful.
instrumental, I think, in all of our lives. She was a
She is
Real
the spirit
force
of
for us.
Ossabaw.
Yeah.
yeah.
She was very loving and caring and close to everybody.
She
and
was.
now I don't remember her ever coming to Middle Place. I mean, I just don't.
We came to her.
We came to her.
Hey, it was
Okay?
a treat to go up to the big house.
Yeah.
And I think her love for this island was
I know, but it
communicated
wasn't
to
a big.
us
It wasn't.
so readily that we all developed that same love.
But if we were going to do, we had a couple. Like if we were going to have the pig roast on the 4th of July, she would come by on the way.
Right.
And say hello to everybody there, and then go down in her little Jeep or whatever she had. She had a little Jeep,
Little blue Jeep, wasn't
little
it?
blue Jeep.
She was
Right.
extraordinarily respectful of
Yeah,
us
yeah.
as individuals
Yeah.
and as a group. And I think that really drew out the best in us.
Yeah, and I also think
Her-
Sandy really thought that us being here was doing something beneficial for the
Yeah.
islands as
Right.
well,
But
in its preservation.
And we just
My-
had
my
so
job
much
was for-
respect for her.
I had photography was what I was doing, and there was a dark room in the big house. So I worked in the dark room pretty regularly. So I got to spend a lot of time with her just because I was in her house. And they wouldn't. When we came up, you were really. Even the dark room was a place you weren't supposed to go. They were very. When we were allowed the house, it was a very restricted area that we could go in. I don't think we ever went up. I mean, we may have gone upstairs for a tour one time or something, but
yeah.
Yeah.
you didn't.
No, we're very restricted.
You didn't go around the house. Yeah.
Justin was down there several times.
Justin came.
And
She
I
would
think
stop
Justin
by.
might come down with Sandy, and sometimes he'd just be on his own because he wanted to hang out with the bigger folk.
But it wouldn't be if it was 2 or 3 times. I mean, it wasn't weekly. You know? I mean,
No.
No, because we did get to see her every week.
Oh,
We get to go up to the big house and eat ice cream and watch Clifford's movie again.
Have we mentioned that yet?
I have a lot of photographs.
Did we mention the ice cream?
I have a lot of photographs.
Yeah,
of
and
Sandy.
is there going to be some at the end of this?
I
What
have a
you
lot
say?
of photographs of Sandy with us, so
Uh-huh.
I know we spent a lot of time with her. We were at the beach together a lot.
Yeah, she'd
and
come to the
a lot
beach.
of other
No, but whenever we had and we had more than, I'd say we had 2 or 3 pig roasts at the beach.
Mhm, yeah.
And,
She'd come to that.
and she'd come to those, and she was the chairman
Heart
of the
and
board.
soul,
She was
yeah.
the chairman of the board of those gatherings.
It was a treat for us to see her.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. But speaking of your photos, this is a little selfish, but I'm wondering what kinds of documents or photographs or scrapbooks or anything like that you might have laying around.
I've got a lot
Uh-huh.
here that I brought.
I was an engineer. I didn't have anything to do with photography, but the architectural students, there were several. Christina, she, and I think Rick Smith, they were avid photographers.
Rick took a lot of
And they took a
photographs.
lot of
And Rob did
photographs.
too. You took a lot of
Yeah,
photographs.
But his-
Rob did too, but they knew how single lens reflex, and
Yeah.
I knew a brownie, you know,
Yeah.
and I didn't even bring a camera with me when I
Larry, did
came.
you-
But the second times, and after we came back for you know, reunions,
Mhm.
I'd learned, and boy, I got in here, and I just went wild the second back on our 21st. And there's-
But I had a single reflex camera. I probably had 1,000 photographs, but they burned up a couple years after I was on the island. And my house burned down.
And do you have letters to your parents or something like that
There wasn't a lot of writing going on.
that discussed what it was like to be here?
I
I don't remember writing one letter in only 3 months.
yeah.
Well, we could go up, and when we were up at the big house on Saturday night, sometimes they'd let us make phone calls.
Yeah.
But it was like a ship-to-shore radio. I mean, it was
Sure.
not, you couldn't even, you had to talk, you know, hello, Mom, over? You know, I mean,
And mail service was sparse.
Sure.
They don't get out much here.
yeah.
And one of the documents in the archive shows the emergency procedure, you know, what to do if someone had a heart attack or something like that. But you never had to deal with that, you know, how
There
to.
was
No cuts.
cuts
Cuts.
or stepping on a nail
There
or
was,
whatever.
there was some,
Christine got stung by a stingray.
right.
Yeah.
And there was some somebody lay down in poison oak or something. Do you remember that?
Laid down?
It could have been
I mean,
Mike.
it was like, was it Mike?
Well, it could have been because he has terrible reactions to
Yeah.
it. I don't know how he survived because I saw him years later one time that he'd gotten poison ivy. It looked like he had leprosy. I've
Oh,
never seen
God.
anybody get poison ivy so bad, but I don't remember him
Yeah.
having an issue here.
Mm-hmm.
There really wasn't, I mean, nobody
God
got
we
bit
were
by a
not-
snake
we
or
were
anything.
pretty-
I
We
mean,
were-
there was
yeah,
nothing.
We were fortunate.
Nobody got hauled off to the emergency room.
No.
No.
But we had close proximity with rattlesnakes and
Yep.
alligators, and they were respectful. We were.
As were we.
Yes, we were.
But you know, like when you go, we learned to go for clams, that you went in your bare feet and walked through the mud, and when you stepped on a clam, you picked it up, and that was a clam. Now, there's no other island in the world you could do that without cutting your feet off, because there'd be crab shells and people would open up a clam there and left it there. But you're walking in mud that
Pristine.
nobody's walked in for 50 years or 500 years or
Right.
whatever. So you could do things here on
there
the
were no
beach.
glass
There was no
bottle
glass
fragments.
bottles to
Right.
worry about.
Right.
It was places nobody had ever been. So it was, I can't remember, some guy wrote, one of those asparagus writers, you know, when you know,
Bill
people-
Gibbons, or
but yeah, you know, but he,
Asparagus, right?
yeah, right, but he wrote a book about how to go,
Wild hickory
Clam
nuts.
digging.
how to go dig clams. In his book said you just take your shoes off and you walk through the mud and you'll find the clams. Because you growing up in New England, you got the shovel out of
Oh, yeah.
of this. You
Oh,
didn't go
yeah.
in there with your bare feet, right?
No.
But you could do it here.
I
And
just had a thought I want to ask. I just realized I don't think any of us were fearful. I mean, we certainly had moments of fear, but I don't.
those people left early.
Well, we were young.
We were young. Yeah.
No, but I do think that the couple people left early, we can't remember who they were because it was just too
I just
bizarre.
remember
It was
seeing-
hard. They knew it was going to be too hard for them.
Yeah, yeah.
They could be
Yeah,
home
yeah, up
sleeping.
at this
Right.
but not.
Yeah, we did. We were. Rocky Mountain spotted fever was around.
Yeah, I did. I did.
Those
but I
days.
was
Lyme
remember us
disease
getting-
had not either
Had
either
not.
developed, or nobody knew what that had existed at that time. And there was a concern that, with the numerous tick bites, somebody might take ill because of that, but that did not happen.
Did not.
Apparently on the island, it hadn't been exposed. to
Well,
the
but ticks,
contamination.
I would say that ticks were probably the largest, ongoing problem.
Yeah.
Chiggers.
Chiggers,
Ooh,
well,
chiggers,
only with the
chiggers.
wrong place.
Chiggers were awful.
No-see-ums
Yeah.
forever, but, you know, that was.
But that one of the things that impressed me the most about the island was how tame it was. Really. I mean, the place looked like somebody had come in, a yard maintenance crew had come in and mowed the entire island.
It
That
the
was the deer and the
That
hogs.
was the deer and the hogs.
Hogs, I had
And the
never
cows
seen
and the.
But we're
You
talking
could have
about the,
literally ridden a horse
Donkey.
at gallop anywhere on dry land.
Yeah.
It made it kind of unique, very.
Yeah.
Yeah.
but so when we
It's
came
not
here,
that
it was
way
so
anymore.
it was so overpopulated with deer that they just grazed the entire island out, and there was a grazing line across the island, about 6 feet, as high as a deer could reach, and you walk through it and you look up and it was full. It wasn't like it was no trees. The forest was full, but it was just grazed from that height, and you could see. That's where you can get in that horse and gallop.
And I don't think I ever used a flashlight the entire time I was here.
You couldn't get any batteries.
No, and I don't know if anybody
He stumbled
did.
a lot,
So we would walk around
In the
in
dark.
total darkness,
or in the moonlight.
Yeah.
with,
Sure.
and
When there
I
was a
think
moon.
oftentimes barefoot, because the place was so tame. You weren't worried about anything. There was
Initially,
no
it-
chance that you were going to step over a dead log and there was a rattlesnake going to bite you, because there weren't dead logs. The place was eaten
But
clean.
initially, there was some concerns about things like that. But
Yeah,
the
there
more
were-
there was human
Noise.
Present.
noise around it all, yes, all of those creatures probably
Away, yeah.
were like, ah, I'm
Well,
out of
and
here."
remember where our bathroom was the first week or so, or two. It was behind that tree or behind that bush or that
Yeah.
palmetto.
Yeah, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know,
yeah.
we didn't have
Until
the
they
Yeah.
could build
latrine
it, yeah.
at first. When did the latrine come? It's probably in here.
Because that would be an event to remember.
Maura, no, I can tell you, Maura cared a lot about a bathroom.
Well, I don't even know what the latrine was like, but
Oh, no, it's just a woods.
Best
Wood
it was
seat.
not
Outhouse.
A wooden
We
seat
had
on
the
a
But it had-
three-sided outhouse with a beautiful
But it
view
had
to
the
the
best
west.
view.
There was
of
no
the
door.
island.
No
The
door.
No
door
doors.
was the marsh.
gorgeous.
There were people
view.
here saying, "Would you get out of
Yeah.
there?"
Yeah.
It's a
You would
great
knock.
place to
How you would
meditate.
knock is you would approach the back of it and say, "Anybody in there?"
It was beautiful.
well, I need to ask each one of you to kind of summarize your what it meant in the long run. Just kind of a wrap up kind of a question about how it's affected you over the last 40 years and how what you carry away from it. So, I guess we should do that one by one, or was Elizabeth here to tell me what to do?
We should do one by one. Just go around the table.
Just one thing before you do that, you'd asked about Clifford West and our interaction with him.
Yeah.
Probably the one thing that I remember maybe the most about it, it was that at one point during the summer, there was a hurricane threatening the coastline.
Mm-hmm.
And they weren't sure what was going to happen because Clifford wasn't going to be responsible for 28 people left out in the wilderness in shacks of hiding behind huge oak trees or whatever. So he came down at one point and said, we have the weather was getting a little tense, and he said that there's a potential hurricane that could hit the Georgia coast or rake up the coast. And when I say we leave the island, you are all going to be packed up and you're going to be out of here in no time at all.
Mm-hmm.
And they were monitoring it, and fortunately that never developed. But he had to be authoritarian in that aspect, and it didn't rub me really well because I rode through several storms in my Florida area where I was from.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I was inside a nice house at the time, but that did, hey, we're tough. We've been out here for 2 months
Yeah,
now.
but
We
he had
can-
to be
You're right.
responsible for it.
yeah, he was responsible, and it created a little bit of friction.
Mm-hmm.
But after that was over, everything kind of returned back to normal, and we lived out the last of the days.
And
Well,
this-
my recollection is that they said, well, if one of these hurricanes hit, everything is going to get washed away. They said the water's going to come over the island, and to me there was no question. I don't want to be here.
No, easy decision, right?
Well, the trouble is, and I was at treehouse. You get to be above the water of the treehouse, but the chances are it's blown away.
Yeah.
The tree won't be there when you.
And a couple more interactions with people who might have been here, Justin and other members of the family?
Yes.
Want to talk about those folks?
Justin was a delight.
Yeah.
He loves the island.
And he was, how old at this time?
He was younger. He was
He's
like
17,
I have a
17
photograph.
or 18 years
Yeah,
old.
teenager.
just a little younger than us.
Yeah, he was old enough to get his license to drive on the island.
Uh-huh.
But he'd come down. He enjoyed our company. He was very young, vibrant.
Mm-hmm.
He had probably some of the creative genes running through him
Mm-hmm.
that his dad had, and he was always thinking and interacting and whatever. And we were kind of like a joy to him, because you figure that you may go mainland, but when you're on the island, you're kind of alone. And out here, he had 26 people that could be his mentors and people he could interact with. And he'd come down in the blue Jeep from time to time, and he'd talk back and forth. They'd be coordinating stuff up at the north end here with Roger Jean and whatever, talking on the two-way. And just a funny anecdote is that I can remember at one time he was talking and whatever, and they were using the 10 code, whatever, and when they were talking, and he talked back and he said, okay, well, 10-4, 6-12 and off. And those were the two insect repellents that were popular back in 1970, and I just cracked me up. I don't know if he did it for a joke or if that was just his naivety, but that's, it was funny. That tickled my funny bone when he did that.
And maybe crap. Libby. Libby. Maybe you had more interactions with him later, because he.
Well, that was John. John.
Oh, okay. Because I saw some letters from Justin in '72 or '73 where he's kind of recruiting for Genesis. So he became sending out these promotional letters like the ones I showed you.
Well, I was going to say that in my final thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let her hold that thought.
Okay, hold that thought.
Okay.
And how about some of the people with environmental groups like the Nature Conservancy? Some of them came to the island.
Friends of EARL.
And was David Brower here while you were here? He was. Well, let's talk about him, because he's a national figure of
It was one of the Saturday nights.
Yeah.
We came up to the main house. And
But like Harriet was saying, though, we were busy. You know? We were very busy just surviving.
Right.
You know?
Well, I want to respond to something. Something just happened. When you said what you did about he was important, he was a national figure, something just waved through me. In the spirit of our community, national figures didn't mean squat.
okay.
We didn't, nobody was more important than another. And do you know what I'm
absolutely
saying?
I agree with
Absolutely
you,
right.
yeah. But
Absolutely.
we didn't know how lucky we were and how famous some of these people were to
Well,
to
I
us.
did, because
I
he was
certainly
a
didn't.
part of this book that Bob Haney was working on at the
But
time.
when Bob
I didn't
when Bob
care.
Haney came down, he may have been head of the.
He was the director of the National Resources.
No, he
but
may have
was
been, but he
Joe
didn't come
Blow to
down here
us.
as
He was
he didn't
our
come down
friend.
here as that person. He
Right.
was Bob Haney driving
Absolutely.
a Jeep and being a goofball.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, he was not.
I don't think anybody came here credentials
Nobody had an
first,
ego.
you know?
Nobody had an ego that
No.
came to talk,
Yeah,
came
that
to
was
visit.
an important
Yeah.
thing. but
That's right,
because
and
what
nobody
this-
was ever introduced
As
there was
world
no big
famous,
introduction.
right.
We were not asked to bow down
Right.
or
No,
anything like that.
No, but
I
And
didn't know
people
who a
just
lot of
gained
these
our
people
respect
were.
by what they gave to us. I mean, you know, we talk about Peter Paul Kellogg. When I went back to the States and researched who this man was, I went, oh my God, I walked next to this
breakfast
man
with
and I had
him.
no idea, you know.
No, but we again, it's the heart of the '60s. Even though it was 1970, we're the ones that are going to change the world. Who are these people?
Yeah, right.
They're just coming to visit.
We also had a passion for being real, for people who were real, and that was what we cared about.
And we were, after all, only in our 20s at the time.
Yeah, well, younger.
What did we know?
But this
We knew everything.
experience, I
Yes, we
think,
did.
helped make us know.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Should I wrap it up? Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, we started at that end. We'll start with you, Harriet.
Well, like I said, I came as a city girl. I mean, I was born and raised, and I really knew nothing about nature. And I think what happened to me afterward is I'm still a city girl. I live in New York City. But my husband and I needed nature in our lives, and I think it was because of this experience. So we have a cabin up in the mountains in Georgia, in New York, and it is my refuge. It is a place that I can go to escape the city, and I think the island gave me that. It gave me a love for the outdoors. It gave me an appreciation for nature. And I talk about Peter Paul Kellogg. I still bird watch all these years. I'm one of the bird nerds you see walking around with the binoculars and those funny shorts. And I can identify, which is something I don't think too many New York City girls can do.
Okay, very good.
All right. Well, I was already very much into nature and
Sure.
aware of nature and all that, but it still really changed me a lot and just really set nature experience as a spiritual experience, and just gave me a lifelong connection. You know, more along the lines of somebody like John Muir, that way of relating to nature. And so, you know, I feel very blessed for that. The other thing would be the group interaction was very important, and the friendships that developed and continued on, in a lot of cases beyond. And because I'm not real outgoing, and so it was very good experience for me with this group. It was just a life-changing experience.
All right, Tom?
I have so much that I could say, and you don't have enough time on the battery, I guess, on the camera. But it greatly impacted my life. Before I came with the environmental movement, one of the thought processes was population explosion. In my own walk, I had thought, okay, I'm not going to have any kids, so that some family might be able to have that third one. Felt that before I came, part of it, and after I came, I carried that. And 4 years later, I wound up meeting a beautiful woman who was nature-minded. She lived her life with her family in Yosemite National Park. And that was part of our meeting together. And we clicked because of that, because I'd been exposed to this and whatever. And I've always appreciated nature ever since here, but even more so instilled it in my kids as a scout leader and whatever. And yeah, I had kids. I have 5 children, and now I have almost 8 grandchildren. And the impact here made me appreciate nature beyond all, and the struggles that are there to preserve it. And I was just glad I had the opportunity.
I got to talk after that.
I'll go to sit on the end, and I'll let you just roll back.
No, that's great.
That's wonderful.
For me, I think it was learning to develop interpersonal skills and working on relationships and organization, and just trying to focus on trying to support getting things accomplished and learn how to do that, work as a team, and coming back and with these old friends, it's the same thing. We've talked about it sometimes last night. Is we're not any different. We're all and that kind of reliving that experience makes the original experience more meaningful, because we still are the same people, and it's nice to feel that. And I think it pushed me toward public service. I worked for governments for 30 years, trying to give back because of what this island gave me in terms of just a gift that you you can't buy. And I tried to give that back for most of my career. And I've always been committed to the coastal islands in Georgia, and involved with the foundation now, trying to continue to do that. So it's just this opportunity to keep caring about an important part of our land.
To answer your question a while ago, after Genesis 1, 1970, I was not finished, and I came back here 2 more times as a participant with Genesis. This winter of 71, I came back, and there were 3 of us here, 3 girls, and we stayed in Rick's cabin, and that was February, March, April of that year, and it was intense. It was very different. It was cold. It was a different kind of harshness. No bugs, but a lot of. Just remember how we had to, get up in the morning, and nobody wanted to get out of bed first to fire up the stove, and
Been there, done that.
then go over to the stable, what was that? The
Cookhouse?
Yeah, which is where our kitchen was, and cracks in the walls, of course, so it's like get the fire going. But that was quite an exciting experience also, which then led me to come back in the summer of 72. I didn't come back in 71 summer, but in 72 as assistant director with John. And I was here for that 3 months summer.
With whom?
John Shellcroft.
Okay.
And there were only less than 15 people. Maybe there were, this started out as 15 and ended up as 12. So, and much more focused on actual results from their research and their work. And during that time, it was summer, it was April or May of 71 when they released the chimpanzees on Bear Island. And I got to be part of that just by chance. I got to go along on the boat to hand out lunches and collect $1 from everybody there, and watch that phenomenal release of those chimpanzees. I think that program went on for a year or 2, but didn't last. Then when I finally left and didn't come back again until our 21st reunion, how the whole experience of Ossabaw changed my life was, I moved to North Carolina and moved to a farm, met my husband. We still live on that farm. It's where we've been ever since we met and were married. We raised 3 children. Our oldest daughter has been hugely involved with environment, so in a way it kind of passed on, I guess. And I'm on the board of directors for an organization called South Wings, which is volunteer pilots that fly all over the Southeast to expose environmental issues that are going on. And so in that sense, and in lots of other things, I just think the environment has always been primary in my heart and concern, and it stemmed from this experience.
Living on Ossabaw Island in the summer of 1970 informed the rest of my life, and is continuing to. I want to just thank all of you for what you've said, because it's a part of me. And I also want to honor Bob Haney, who was really instrumental in my being able to be privileged to come, and Missy Greer, who is not here. I didn't think I would be able to speak, because I'm so sad that she is not with us, because she was one of the most alive people I'd ever known, and became my dearest friend. And because of her, and because of Philip Greer and Missy's Aunt Helen, I after I graduated from Georgia State, went to teach school in Northeast Georgia and lived in a cabin and raised chickens and became a weaver and really wanted to continue what I had begun here. And I was so sad when we left Ossabaw, and I don't remember if it was Mara or you, Harriet, but one of you said as we were on the boat, and Missy and I were crying and we were so sad to be leaving the island. It's something we knew that we'd never experience anything like this again in such purity. But one of you said, well, this ends one cycle, but a new cycle begins. And I didn't like that when it was said, but I recognized it. I knew it was a deep truth, that there was something beginning. But I honestly thought that what we were doing was so important, and I honestly have spent much of the last 40 years feeling so guilty that I haven't done enough for the environment. And I feel something of a renewal in being back here, but I feel, you know, the Gaia theory. Living here and being here again on the island, I'm very aware of the living entity that she is, that the earth is. And I love these words. I'm so grateful to you for providing this from Amara. This was from Bob Haney. Listen to the land. Hear it sing. Make Genesis a testimony to life. And I feel that. I feel that's what we're doing. And I just feel so blessed. I know we all do. But make Genesis a testimony to life. I love that. So thank you for asking me to speak.
I probably could have said everything that everybody's, already said. For me, I grew up in a rural environment in northern New Jersey, but it was very rural. And, at the time, that was just my world. I played in the woods when I was a kid. And then went to Georgia Tech and just for 5 years lived in a city environment. And, took everything in stride, and I appreciated, all the city had to offer. And then being here, towards the end of the summer, the thought, or sometime during that summer, the thought hit me, because I just love this place so much that it was, the place was important, but the bigger thing was just that it was a beautiful natural environment, and it could be anywhere. And for me, that was, I wanted to stay in that as much as I could. I remember, wanting to stay here, and that wasn't practical at the time. And I think I even talked about trying to get a communal thing together or something. That didn't happen. But anyhow, that was my takeaway, that the beauty of nature is everywhere. It is. And it needed to be preserved.
My turn.
Yep.
Clock's running.
Clock's running.
Okay, well.
No guitar.
Everybody knows this is a really rare place. Somehow it wasn't economically feasible to seize it and develop it before the movement started that would want to stop that. Everything else, Florida got taken, right? Except the parts that were national parks. North Carolina is just this one. In most of the Georgia Islands, I think there are a couple that, like there's Little Tybee, and there are a couple others that are pretty much uninhabited. But this is the only one that ever got, that I know of, that ever got sort of developed, and there were plantations here and everything, but it never got developed. I mean, there are no high-rises here. And I hope that whatever we were doing, I hope that somehow we can give ourselves a little bit of credit for protecting it. I don't know if we did or we screwed it up, and they had to go to other measures to actually protect it. I really don't know, but for me personally, we were living during a time when the Vietnam War was the biggest thing going on for males. Everybody was, if you didn't have a critical skills deferment, you were going off to war. There was no question about it. So, you know, what did I do for a critical skills deferment? I went to Georgia Tech, you know, went through that in 4 years, and then when I got out of Georgia Tech, I taught high school at Frederick Douglass High School in Atlanta for a year, and that was probably worse than going to Vietnam. It was one of the most horrible experiences of my life. Truly, it was like being in war every day. I think it's probably still like that.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not there anymore. And then I got this opportunity to come here. So it had been this intensive thing trying to stay out of Vietnam and trying to, you know, do my career, and then teaching high school. And then we got here, and I think it was about, I didn't bring a tent. So there was, I think, a big tent. But if you want to be by yourself, you had to lay out on the grass, which is what I was doing when this happened. So I was sleeping, I don't know how many days we'd been there. And all of a sudden, I woke up in the morning, and I just started laughing. It was this uncontrollable laughter. And it went on just for a really long time. And it was something about being, I don't know if you can say it was here, just the relaxed nature of the thing. Everybody said we worked hard, but as far as I know, we didn't have any privations. Maybe we didn't have television. We didn't have electricity. I don't think we did. We didn't have lights. We had to work for our food and stuff, and we couldn't go to restaurants, and we couldn't do all this stuff, but I didn't feel that there was anything missing from my life being here. Nothing. And so you can say, well, how does it affect your life after that? I have no idea. but I'm pretty sure that I wouldn't be the same person had I not come here.
There you go.
And hopefully, me being here helped the island in some way. I don't know if it did or not. Or all of us all being here.
Yeah, to me and Peter, we actually thought and said the same thing on the car traveling down here. And that what was going on outside of what we were doing here and what our intentions were for being here was like a big chess game. There's bishops and knights and kings and queens out there that were working the chessboard. And we were pawns in their game. There was negotiations, there was things going between the island people and the people that it wanted to condemn it. And we were just pawns on the board. But I don't feel as though I was a pawn.
But in a
What
way,
I feel is the fact that I got to be able be on the board to play.
That's it.
but in a way, we were able to step out of the game too.
Yeah.
And that was a blessing.
Yeah, on here we could step out of the game, but we knew our presence here was doing something. We were part of that struggle.
All right, thank
we
you
done?
all. That was great.
I guess there will be people that'll ask whether or not what we did here was significant in any way, whether it met the big picture or not. And I'd heard this anecdote or this story told. It's probably been told in a dozen different variations over the years. But I'll just kind of say it because we're on the Georgia coastal islands here, and maybe relate it in this way, that at one time there was a great storm that hit the coast, big nor'easter or hurricane or whatever. And after the storm, the people came down to see the devastation, and I guess the people from the news were here and whatever, and they found this little girl walking on the beach. I'm going to call her Missy. And they came up to her because they saw she was bending down and standing up and throwing stuff in the water. And a guy came down to her and says, "Little girl, what are you doing?" She goes, "Well, I'm seeing starfish and sand dollars and creatures, sea creatures, and I'm throwing them back in the ocean after the storm." And the guy looks at her and he goes, you can, for miles in each direction, as far as you can see and way beyond, they're everywhere. They're all out here. They're all going to perish. That's just part of nature. And she goes, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, what do you think you'll be able to do of any significance to remedy that?" And she looked at the guy kind of puzzled, and she bent down and she picked up a starfish and picked it and tossed it back in the sea. And she goes, may not be able to save everything and make a difference, but I made a difference for him." And that's the end of that story. It just continues. Each of us do what we can in our lives. Thank you.
Very powerful. Very powerful.
Thank you. All right, thanks, guys.
Spent my time at studies, and I've taken my degree. I've memorized my formula, my A's and B's and C's. But the lesson I learned came long ago, and not from such as these. And I'm gonna be a country girl again. Oh yes, I'm gonna be a country girl again. With an old brown dog and a big front porch and rabbits in the pen. I tell you, all the lights on Broadway don't amount to an